North America, 10,000 years ago. Asteroids no longer threaten to destroy the Earth. Dinosaurs have long faded into the sands of time. Homo sapiens are confidently conquering new lands. Even the last ice age has come to an end. Our planet has already left the era of great catastrophes behind. Or maybe not. After all, completely suddenly, as if with the snap of the fingers, an entire continent became largely desolated. All these animals died 10,000 years ago. Why? Today, we will try to figure out what really happened there. Ancient monsters of North America. Let's travel 11,700 years back to a time when the Pleistocene epoch was nearing its end. Here in North America, along with ancient humans, there were fearsome monsters and weird creatures we can only find today in ancient myths and fairy tales. A bizarre vehicle resembling a compact armored car of some alien civilization rumbles out of the forest. It's a Glyptotherium, a prehistoric relative of the armadillo, but the size of an average rhinoceros. Glyptotherium lived in tropical and subtropical forests throughout present-day Venezuela, Central America, Mexico, and the southern United States. Scientists believe this living mini tank probably grew to 2 meters, 6.5 feet in length, and could weigh 400 kilograms, 880 pounds. It's like a medium-sized cow or an Arabian horse. You still don't think that's a lot? Well, take a look at this. Would you feel safe around a creature like that? The entire back of the Glyptotherium was covered with bone plates called osteoderms. These plates were up to 3.5 centimeters thick, like the case of a good safe box. And that's not all. The tail of the Glyptotherium is really impressive. It looks like some weapon from a fantasy setting, covered with massive spiky rings. Glyptotherium actively used it to fend off any attack. Any predator trying to reach the soft parts of the Glyptotherium risked being sent into a deep knockout at any second. Now imagine what it was like for the Native Americans who were unfortunate enough to have these monsters in their neighborhood. They probably tried to avoid them in some way, didn't they? Well, actually, quite the opposite. Ancient North Americans effectively hunted Glyptotheria. For all its monstrousness, this animal was 100% vegetarian. All this formidable armor was only needed for protection, but it proved ineffective against humans. Excavations at Taima in northwest Venezuela unveiled obvious evidence of humans hunting Glyptotherium. Of the 6 fossil skulls found, 4 have fracture marks from club strikes, and there are signs of processing on the bones. Yes, despite all its armor and weapons, Glyptotherium eventually disappeared about 10,000 years ago due to climate change and overhunting. We walk further along the sun-scorched plain. Silhouettes of animals appear in the distance. There is something familiar about them. As we get closer, we realize that these are camels. What? How can there be camels in North America? Yes, it's hard to believe it, but the indigenous peoples of the Americas saw these amazing creatures in ancient times. However, these are not the humpbacked creatures we know. These are Camelops, North American camels. They looked as if somebody had taken a modern camel and added a decent amount of height to it. It was more than 2 meters, 7 feet tall at its withers, and it weighed up to a ton. The funny thing is that nobody knows for sure if it had a hump. The skeleton doesn't reveal it. Either there was a hump and it left no traces, or Camelops was an athletic version of the camel, lean and slender. Camelops could feed on both grass and tree leaves, and clearly had a knack for long journeys. Herds of these animals could travel dozens of miles a day. Remains of Camelops are often found near tools, suggesting that ancient people killed them when the animals got stuck in the mud, got trapped, or became sick. At the Rancho La Brea in California, for example, the remains of 40 individuals were found. It should be noted here that the Rancho La Brea is a very specific place known as a graveyard of ancient animals and sort of a time capsule. The reason is the tar, puddles, and pits, which in those times turned into a trap for animals. A lot of animals got stuck here, and in unthinkable quantities. It seems that Camelops, migrating in herds, hoped that they had found water here, but actually they found their mass death instead. However, the species didn't survive much longer anyway. Camelops, like Glyptotherium, disappeared about 10,000 years ago. Why? Perhaps the climate changed and there was even less vegetation and water. Perhaps humans hunted these animals too intensely. Either way, North America lost its only camel forever. Meanwhile, we get out of the hot plains and finally reach the long-desired water, a lake densely covered with aquatic vegetation. Something very weighty is approaching us from the thicket. It's a beaver. It's not the cute little animal we know, but its prehistoric cousin. And it's the size of a Himalayan bear. It could reach 2.7 meters, 9 feet in length in those days, and weighed up to 100 kilograms, 220 pounds. And those teeth! Hard to imagine what kind of dams it was able to build. Probably it could have felled huge sequoias. No, it didn't. This beaver didn't seem to have built any dams. Its teeth, although intimidating looking, up to 15 centimeters long, didn't have the typical sharp cutting edges as those of the modern beavers. It was more likely to have specialized in digging up the roots of aquatic plants. With teeth like these, it could have provided a very unpleasant experience for any predator that dared to attack it. However, its main defense was agility. Wet, slippery body weighing 100 kilos sharply snapped, suddenly flung into the water with a noisy splash, duping the predator. By the way, archaeologists are still puzzled over the question of whether our ancestors hunted giant beavers. One fact is indisputable. The bones of these beasts were found near human campsites. So it is quite possible that the diet of the ancient guys could include something cooler than a mammoth, namely a supersized beaver. And it's not only about the wish to have a big meal. According to the legends of the indigenous peoples, a giant beaver would gladly snack on human flesh if it got very hungry. Other legends describe these animals as terrifying creatures capable of flooding villages and driving people off their land. So people sent the beaver to Kingdom Come unceremoniously to avoid becoming its dinner themselves. Anyway, the giant beaver has not survived to our days, and we cannot be sure which of these myths is true. This animal also disappeared about 10,000 years ago. Why? Perhaps it didn't have enough food in a changing climate. Perhaps its habitat was too tied to water, and drying rivers and lakes became a death trap for it. Unlike its modern relatives, who adapted and stayed with us, the giant beaver could not find a way out. And we set off further, reach the forest, and stumble upon something really terrifying. The silence is broken by a howl. One howl. Then a second. A third. Dozens of them. But these are no ordinary wolves. It's something much, much more dangerous. If you've seen or read about a direwolf in some fantasy, you've probably thought they existed only in fairy tales. Well, how shall we put it? Let's take for comparison a regular gray wolf, not the smallest one. Now, let's multiply it by about half. We get a beast weighing up to 110 kilos, 242 pounds, almost as tall as an Irish wolfhound. Add massive jaws, capable of not just nibbling, but breaking through bone. Studies show they had a bite force of over 160 BFQ, while the gray wolf had a bite force of about 136. And this wasn't a lone thug. They hunted in packs of up to 30 animals. This is backed up by hundreds of direwolf's remains in La Brea, the aforementioned tar pits in California. And the prey could be not only deer, but also the aforementioned camels, monstrous bisons, and even young mammoths. Surround chase, tear the huge-sized prey to pieces. That was their typical tactic. Judging by the finds, these wolves did not just hunt. They actively competed with other predators, including saber-toothed tigers. The question is whether the direwolves faced humans. There is not a lot of direct evidence of it, but imagine people with stone spears and a horde of toothy monsters in one place. They probably crossed paths, at least in fights for prey. Most likely, the humans drove the wolves off with fire, ambushes, or traps. Direwolves disappeared about 10,000 years ago. Either there was not enough prey for them, or they failed to compete with our clever ancestors. But their genes still waft in some dogs and wolves. So looking at your little dog, sometimes you may think, isn't there a little bit of that ancient monster hiding in it? But for all its dread, there was something much more terrifying roaming the North America 11,000 years ago. And we're about to meet it. Silence. Even the birds stop singing. A monster steps out, stocky with mighty paws and incredibly long fangs that look like knives from a medieval torturer's kit. It's a Smilodon, a saber-toothed tiger in plain language. However, it does not have much in common with modern tigers. The first thing that catches the eye is, of course, its teeth. 2 curved fangs of up to 28 centimeters, 11 inches in length. They could easily and deeply penetrate the flesh of their prey, which is what Smilodons did when they hunted. But there's a catch. Despite their frightening appearance, the jaws of the Smilodon were even weaker than those of the average modern lion. These fangs were not meant for blunt force. Smilodon knew the places to stab: the neck, the arteries, the soft tissues, causing the victim to bleed out in seconds. Smilodon didn't chase its prey. It sneaked up like a professional assassin. Its powerful paws and solid shoulders enabled it to leap several meters forward and even attack such giants as bison and young mammoths. Smilodon is usually pictured as a lone hunter, but the above-mentioned tar pits of La Brea contain large groups of these cats. This suggests that Smilodons may have hunted in packs like modern lions, except that instead of long chases, they acted swiftly. They attacked, killed, and pulled their prey to pieces. The size of the Smilodon is impressive. The largest of them, Smilodon populator, reached 400 kilograms, 880 pounds. That's about the size of a medium-sized horse. But in North America, there was another species, Smilodon fatalis. It was smaller, but still impressive, weighing up to 280 kilograms, 620 pounds. The question is, did Smilodon fatalis encounter humans? Most likely, it did. The remains of these predators are found in the same places where ancient humans lived. Obviously, it was almost insane to try hunting such a monster. Most likely, people used traps, pits, and fire for this purpose. On the other hand, a reasonable question is, why would they hunt it at such risk? Perhaps people themselves often fell prey to these ferocious saber-toothed cats. After all, even modern big cats kill 500 people a year, and Smilodons were many times larger, faster, and more fearsome. So ancient people could well have aimed to preventatively secure their environment by eliminating the most dangerous threat. But Smilodons became extinct about 10,000 years ago, when their prey, mammoths and other large animals, died out. Then again, competition with humans may have been a serious issue for them. Despite the extinction, the Smilodons left behind one of the most vivid legacies in myths. A beast with 11-inch long blades is a nightmare in itself. Do you think it's not going to get any scarier today? Well, you may be wrong. From behind the rocks emerges, yes, something huge. We got used to the fact that this environment has got huge monsters. It's not just a bear, it's a grizzly on steroids. Have you ever seen a real grizzly? No? Here it is. Check it out. And that's not the biggest one. Now look at this. Arctidus is a short-faced bear, one of the largest land predators in history. Even on all fours, this monster was taller than the average man, and if it got up on its hind legs, it could reach an incredible height of 4 meters, 13 feet, and it weighed up to a ton or even more, like an off-road vehicle. Its paws were longer than those of any modern bear, and its body was powerful and fit. It was not a bulky forest dweller, but a great runner. Judging by its skeletal structure, the Arctidus could run up to 50 kilometers per hour. Try running away from it. You wouldn't stand a chance. The skull of a short-faced bear clearly implies that these powerful jaws could easily bite through even a thick mammoth bone. Teeth, large and sharp, easily coped with both meat and coarse plants. And that's where the debate arises. Was it a hunter or a scavenger? Some scientists believe that Arctidus behaved like a daring hyena, stealing prey from other predators, including saber-toothed tigers. But it might have hunted on its own, tracking down prey, exhausting it with its speed, and finishing it off like a modern grizzly bear. People most likely avoided direct encounters with the Arctidus, but it appears the bear didn't always avoid them. Sometimes, Arctidus tracks are found near ancient human campsites. It may have taken prey from humans or even attacked them. The short-faced bear became extinct about 11,000 years ago. The main reason was the extinction of the large animals it hunted and competition with humans who were more cunning. And even though it disappeared, the Arctidus left behind many legends. Some indigenous peoples had tales of giant bears that were so strong they could move boulders and devastate settlements. And if it had survived to this day, perhaps it would have been called the king of beasts instead of the lion. And now we are going to meet the giants, against which even this bear would look unimpressive. The ground shakes as they step on it, and then several giant silhouettes appear. They're very recognizable. You can't mistake them for anything else. These are mammoths. Something similar, yet slightly different, moves in the forest's shadows. These are mastodons. Compared to huge mammoths, they looked like babies, but in fact, they were about the size of modern elephants. The Columbian mammoth, the largest of the American species, reached a height of 4 meters, 13 feet, and weighed up to 12 tons. That's like 2 modern African elephants. Mastodons looked like their smaller cousins, up to 3 meters, 10 feet tall, weighing up to 6 tons. They resembled elephants, except they were shorter and bulkier. Their tusks were shorter, but more strongly curved, almost like huge sickles. And despite their size, mammoths and mastodons were not invincible. They could trample to death an attacking predator, but they couldn't defend themselves against humans with spears and traps. Stone tips found by archaeologists indicate that ancient hunters did attack these giants. They used the tactic of overdriving, causing the animals to get bogged down in swamps or deep, steep ravines, and then they killed them. Some of the mammoth's remains had up to 8 stone tips stuck in them. One wrong step could result in the hunter being crushed under tons of meat and bones. But the risk was justified. The mammoth wasn't only a source of meat. Its bones were turned into weapons, tools, and even elements of dwellings. Its tusks were used for jewelry, and its hides were crafted into clothing and cover from the cold. Essentially, killing a mammoth meant securing resources for months to come. Mastodons, too, were heavily hunted. Their meat was just as valuable, while their thick skin and bones served as materials for tools. It's worth noting that mammoths and mastodons themselves did not hunt other animals and ate exclusively vegetable food. But unlike mammoths, mastodons preferred forests and ate branches and leaves rather than grass. This made them less easy to hunt, but still didn't save them from extinction. Mastodons and American mammoths went extinct about 12,000 to 10,000 years ago. Why? Most likely, it was a combination of factors: the disappearance of grassy steppes and extermination by humans. The outcome, though, is the same. North America lost its giants. That's why our question at the beginning of the video is a bit tricky. It's a big question as to who had to be saved and from whom, because there are 8 billion people today, and none of the above-mentioned animals survived.